kicking off with beautiful blousy peonies. Look at these, aren't they just fantastic? We're right in peak peony season at the moment, a woefully short season. And I was talking to a peony grower during the week, and they were saying that they've lost about 90% of their crop, about 10% of their crop is marketable. Can you imagine having a short season, high value crop and the weather just lands wrong and you lose 90% of it? So just so sad. And obviously it's not just the flower growers, but a lot of fresh produce growers at the moment are really struggling with this very unusual hot weather. So roundup for Agri-TechE this week. So Niab hosted a lovely event on Wednesday where they put on a kind of showcase event for trustees of Niab and East Malling and members of sort of friends and guests of Niab. And it was really fantastic. There was a whole kind of smorgasbord of Niab's research was on display. And we had a tour of the precision breeding facility, which is arguably the biggest in the UK, if not globally, one of the biggest globally. And that sort of precision breeding facility is really important because they have the technology, the experience to be able to regenerate plants from what's called tissue culture, a really important part of being able to introduce sort of the precision breeding tools and techniques into plants. They do, I think, wheat, rice, potato, soybean legumes, really tricky. Oilseed rape, did I say that? So it was really fantastic to see the facility there and the knowledge and experience as to how to transform these plants and introduce new specific genetic changes into these important varieties. And while we're there, also saw one of our members, Spore Sense. They're collaborating with Niab. So they've got a detection system for yellow rust. Met them at the World Agri-TechE Summit last year, actually. And so great to see the work that's going on there. We're also talking about the kind of validation and the testing and the cropping systems research that goes on at Niab. And then I had a really interesting conversation, and I sort of kind of knew some of this, but it was good to have it sort of articulated properly, which is the impact that variety has on the microbiome around the root of a crop, and I'm thinking wheat particularly. So what is it about wheat genetics that can influence the bacteria, the microbiome that sits around the root in the soil? And it changes. So plants can really influence the microbiome that sits around them in the soil, and trying to understand what is going on at a genetic basis in the plant to influence those messages that go out to the microbiome. Fascinating stuff. So thank you, Stephanie, for explaining that so beautifully. Now, while we're talking about wheat genetics, do you know what a pangenome is? So there was a very interesting article has been put out by the Earlham Institute. So work being led by Rachel Rusholme Pilcher, which is looking at trying to develop the pangenome for wheat. Now, we know what a genome is, right? That's the kind of full genetic complement of an organism. But certainly in research, you tend to look at kind of one reference genome, and rightly so, because you don't want to have lots of different variations. But that variation across a whole species and the individuals within a species is really important to understand kind of more broadly what's going on. So pangenomes have been done in I think plants, animals, humans and microbes, but not so much in plants. So Rachel has been kind of leading that. And the work that she's doing is going to help sort of improve an understanding of where in the genome particular genes for certain traits might land, because you can then understand more about the variation across the entire species. So heroic work made possible only by really high-powered computing technology and obviously visionary scientists. So I enjoyed reading about that. And then while we're talking about sort of big populations, there's an article that's just been put on the member page by Kemp. So Kemp, a law firm specialising in intellectual property management in plants and microbes. And they've got an article about how you should go about patenting and protecting microbial crop products. And it's slightly complicated, but obviously Kemp is there to sort of talk you through it, around whether it's the strain, whether it's a combination of bacteria, how that all works. As we move into biologicals, that's going to be more important. And what else? We had Newsletter Land, and we've published or released, launched, whatever you do with a podcast, the one I recorded with Disangos a while ago. And we're talking about, among other things, spray application research validation technology as a national capability in the UK. So wherever you get your podcast, check it out. Okay, that will do for this week. Hope you don't get too hot. See you next weekend.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Agri-TechE update. Subscribe, share and stay connected. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest innovations straight into your inbox. See you next week.